In Chapter 8, we're covering the inseparable prepositions and the conjunctive of. It's very nice that both the inseparable prepositions and the conjunctive of are pointed in a similar manner, so that's why we're looking at them together. Now, the inseparable prepositions are called inseparable because they attach to the front of a word and are not allowed to be separate from the word. They must attach to it. In the same manner, the conjunctive of attaches to the front of a word. Let's take a look at what we're talking about. We have the inseparable preposition lamed, and this is the word to or for. And we have the inseparable preposition bait. This is in or with. And we have the inseparable preposition kaf, which is like or as or according to. Now these attach to the front of the word. Of course, the conjunctive vav also attaches. It's a vav. And all of these in Proto-World or Proto-Hebrew had pataks underneath them. And this will bear out in what we're going to be looking at in attaching these. Now, as we discuss the inseparable preposition, I will just be using one of them I'll use the lamed as the example to show you how they attach, but they all attach in the same way, the lamed, the bait, and the kaf, but we'll use the lamed just for the example to be consistent. Now, pointing these and what they look like when they attach to the front of a word is what we're going to be dealing with next. What we want to do is look at how do these attach or look when they attach to a word. Now, the normal way to attach these inseparable preposition is that these are going to be attached at the front of the word. Of course, we said they attach to the front of a word. And so we would have something like, in Proto-Hebrew, something like la davar. Something like this. If we're going to go back, take the davars, kametzes back to pataks, and then, of course, the original patak underneath the lamed. And then if we work the syllable rules coming back from Proto-Hebrew back into Biblical Hebrew, then, of course, we put davar back where it should be. Closed accented prefers long. Pretonic open must be long, and that's why we're getting these two here. And now, of course, the pretonic here we're talking about because the accent is on the end. If it were not on the end, I would have to show you that it's right here. But so pretonic open must be long, and now original open propretonic, Hebrew will reduce the original short vowel to a vocal schwa. So what happens is you see these inseparable prepositions very often at the front of the word. It's so far away from the tone syllable, and it's an open syllable as well. And so they, according to rule number 5, they're very often or more often reduced to a vocal schwa. So this is the normal way that you'll see these attached, is with the vocal schwa at the front of a word. And so you would have ledavar as this. Now, the second way that these can attach would be before a vocal schwa. If we had a lamed, let's say, attached to a word that begins with a vocal schwa, such as the name, Shemuel. Let's, if I were going to attach, instead of Samuel, Shemuel means Samuel. If I wanted to say to Samuel, then what I'm going to look at is attaching it like this. Actually, if we wanted to go back through time, it would we would have to go back and say, well, this is originally that patak, and it's reduced to a vocal schwa, and now we have a vocal schwa and a vocal schwa. These are both open propretonic syllables, or they were so. And so now, what do we do with two vocal schwas at the beginning of a word? We have the schwa fight. And if you remember that two vocal schwas at the beginning of a word will have a schwa fight, the first one wins and becomes a short vowel. So we have that happening here, and so we get lishmuel. And this first schwa becomes the hirik, the second schwa goes silent, and we get lishmuel, and this would be to Samuel or for Samuel, because lamed is 2 or 4. And so this is how we would attach the inseparable preposition before a vocal schwa. We have attach it with the vocal schwa, and then we have the schwa fight. Now, if we're going to attach this before a, let's see, this was before a vocal schwa. If we're going to attach it before a yod vocal schwa, then it's going to be slightly different. We have something else happening. Let's take the word yeladim. Yeladim here with the vocal schwa, but it's a yod, and we'll attach the lamed to it in its proto form with the patach, and then we'll of course reduce it. It's original open propretonic, so we're going to reduce it to the vocal schwa. Now we have two vocal schwas at the beginning of a word, and we have to have the schwa fight. So we have the schwa fight, and it becomes the hirik. And now this, we would think that this would be the end, just like we had up here. But now we have something different happening. We have the schwa fight. Now we have something new called the Hebrew love story. And this is, of course, you know from past chapter that the second chapter, or first chapter, excuse me, that we have the hirik yod as a historic long vowel. And the hirik and the yod now want to get back together, so the yod drops the silent, what has just gone silent, that silent schwa, and the hirik and the yod get back together here. That's called the Hebrew love story. And so we end up with something like li ladim, like this. So before a yod vocal schwa, then you have the schwa fight and the Hebrew love story, and this will be the result that we have right here. It's important to know this Hebrew love story. This will happen elsewhere as well. Now, before a composite schwa, if we're going to attach the inseparable preposition, then we're going to end up with a schwa fight again, but this time, of course, whenever you have a composite schwa, then the schwa fight is going to end up with the winner taking the corresponding short vowel. So if I have the word for land, which is adamah, let's see here. If we have adamah, land or ground, and I wanted to say to a land or for a land, then I would attach the inseparable preposition, and it's vocal schwa, and now I have two vocal schwas. The composite schwa is vocal, the lamed has a vocal schwa, and we have to have that schwa fight again. And as I mentioned with the composite schwas, that what will happen is the first one wins and becomes the corresponding short vowel. So we end up with la adamah, like thus. So the lamed or the kaf or the bait preposition will take whatever the corresponding short vowel is of the composite schwa. And this would be true if it were a chatif segol or chatif chametz hatuf, the O variety or the E variety of the composite as well. So this is what we would get. Now, if we were going to attach the inseparable preposition before an accented syllable, something different happens, and it works according to the syllable rules. If we have something like the word, now let's see, before an accented syllable, then we're going to have the word mayim, something like this. This is the word for water. And if I wanted to say to water or for water, then I would attach the lamed. And now I should have a vocal schwa here, right? Well, we would think so. But instead of being so far away from the tone syllable or the accented syllable, it's now pre-tonic. And if we go back to that original patach underneath that lamed, then work the syllable rules here. Pre-tonic open must be long. You will lengthen that. So pre-tonically, we will have a lengthening of the vowel underneath the original patach underneath the lamed instead of that reduction to a vocal schwa, which happens when it's pro-pretonic, so far away from the accented syllable. Here it's right next to it, and so its pretonic open must be long, and that's what we get right here. Now that said, this is great, but we also know that it happens so frequently that you see these inseparable prepositions with these vocal schwas that by analogy that Hebrew will often, a small percentage of the time, go ahead even pretonically and put that vocal schwa there. So you could have lamayim, or you might even see lemayim. So you could see either one with the kametz or with the vocal schwa. Now, I would want you to create, if you're going to create this form, to create it with the kametz, which would be correct. But if you, on a test, did something different and put the vocal schwa, you would not be wrong, because percentage-wise it is a possibility. So this is what we have when the preposition is pretonic, right before the tone syllable. Now there are also two special cases of attaching the inseparable preposition, and these have to do with the word for God, Elohim, and the word for Yahweh, the name of God, Yahweh. And so they attach differently according to what happens in these. Let's take a look at these possibilities. And one is, of course, Elohim, as we mentioned. We start out with Elohim, and this is the word for God. Again, it's a plural, but we've, I think, said something about that. We can talk about that later. But what we're looking at here, if we were going to attach the lamed or the beit or the kaf preposition, we would expect that it would take this corresponding short vowel because of a schwa fight. Vocal schwa, accents way over here, and then it takes the corresponding short vowel of that composite. This is what we would expect. But this is not what we're getting. What we're getting is the aleph here quiescing or dying. And so it loses whatever it has. And then to compensate for the quiescing or death of the aleph, then you lengthen this short isagol to a long isere, and you get lelohim. And so in this manner, we have a special case going on with just with the word Elohim, that it will look like lelohim. This is what it will do. Now, we also have a special case with the name Yahweh. And what's going on here is the Hebrews did not like, at least later in time, they did not like to speak the word Yahweh. They did not want to offend God by perhaps mispronouncing or misspeaking in the use of His name. Did not want to take His name in vain. So again, later on, they did not read it. And so they wanted to, instead of speaking Yahweh, they spoke the word Adonai, which means Lord or Master. And so what we're having then is that when we're trying to attach the inseparable preposition to the front of the name for Yahweh, that the Masoretes were reading Adonai, the word Adonai. And of course, Adonai is the word Adonai, such as this. And so they're reading Adonai, and the text has Yahweh. And so when the Masoretes point this, then they take, it's as if the Yod has the Chatif Patak, this composite, and so what they're, and they put these pointings, they could do something like this. They would do something like this, and you would have, actually without the lamed, you would have Yahovah, and that's of course where you get Jehovah, or at least where some would like to get the personal name being pronounced Jehovah, but this is not what we have. This is that's a vowel pointing of another word, Adonai, on the name Yahweh. And so as the Masoretes were reading this, then they're looking at this lamed as if it were attached to Adonai. And so what they're going to do is take the schwaphite and the corresponding short vowel. So we have the lamed taking the patach here instead of what we would expect perhaps with a vocal schwa. And so what you're going to actually see in the text would be something like this, and you won't see necessarily the vowel pointing, and so you would see this as a special case for the name of Yahweh with the inseparable preposition attached. So we have two special cases. One with Elohim, you get Lelohim. One with the word Yahweh, the name Yahweh. But it would be read, actually, as we look at it, Ladonai, because they're again they would be reading the word Adonai here. And it is interesting that as we're looking at this whole idea of Yahovah, that the German translation then took this reading of Yahovah and they transliterated it to Jehovah. And of course, in German, the J is a Y sound. You get Yehovah. And then the English, King James, liked this and transliterated it the same. But of course, in English, then you're going to read this Jehovah. And so what we have then in the name Jehovah is actually, or the word reading of Jehovah is actually a English reading of a German transliteration of the wrong vowel pointing on the name for Yahweh. So the reading Jehovah is not necessarily the reading. It's not the reading that we should be reading as far as the name Yahweh. Perhaps Yahweh is the best way to read the name, but Jehovah's Witnesses, I think, have an issue to take perhaps with what I've just been saying, but this is what we have. So let's take a look at the last way or item we have to deal with as far as the inseparable preposition, and this is the inseparable preposition before the article. Whenever you have the inseparable preposition added to the article, what happens is Hebrew at times will drop out a hey when it's between two vowels. And so you might see something like what we would expect, La Hamelech, something like this. We would expect this, but here we have the hey between two vowels. It has its own vowel, and so it drops out, and you end up with La Melech. And this is why what we call is, we say that the lamed supplants the article and just takes over its vowel pointing, and so that's what we have here. It would have a hey. If we wanted to say Hamelech, it would just have the hey right here under my thumb. But the lamed supplants the article and takes over its pointing. And so if I have, again, Lamelech, that would be, as we see the patach and the dagesh in the first letter of the root, we would say that's an pointing of the article. So this is not to a king, but this is to or for the king. So this is how we would translate this. We need to take note of this. It's very important that we know how, again, these things are pointed so we know how to best translate. And so we would do the same thing if we had, let's say, the word afar for dust or dirt. And we're going to attach the article to this. Of course, before an unaccented ayin kametz, we're going to go with the sagol, afar. But then if we were going to add the lamed to this, we would have le'afar. Again, the lamed just supplanting that article, and this would be to the dirt or for the dirt or dust, and in this manner. Now, it's very nice that this is the end of our inseparable prepositions. Now we're looking at the conjunctive vav. Conjunctive vav, a conjunction attaches two things. Conjunctive vav being and, but, even, something like this. Now, it's very nice that it attaches before a vocal schwa in the same manner that the inseparable preposition with a vocal schwa before most words, it's going to attach with a vocal schwa. Again, in antiquity or Proto-Hebrew was that patak, the original patak. Now, before a yod vocal schwa, a yod vocal schwa, we're going to again have that Hebrew love story. We'll have that schwa fight Hebrew love story, and so you're going to end up with the V, something like Yehudah. You'll have Yehudah, but you'll have Vihudah and Judah, something like this. And then if you're going to have it before a composite schwa, it's going to do the same thing again as the inseparable preposition, and it will take the corresponding short vowel. So before a guttural with a composite, it will have the schwa fight and become the corresponding short vowel. And then it does the same thing before, as far as the accented syllable. So before the accent. For the accented syllable, it again is going to be pretonic open, must be long, but again, a small percentage of the time it can also go ahead and take that vocal schwa. And then also the special cases, it does the same thing before Elohim. You get Velohim. Again, the quiescing the aleph, the lengthening of that segol to a sere. You get Velohim, or you get also Vadonai. Whoops, I can't see it there. Let's bring it back up. You get Yod He Vav He. You get Vadonai, and so you get the same thing happening with the special cases, and that should be it. But there's one more thing that happens, and with the conjunctive vav, and that is that the conjunctive vav before a simple vocal schwa, not before a composite now, but before a simple vocal schwa, the conjunctive vav will go to a shurek. It will go to a long, historic long vowel. And so if we have a word like devar, like this, then we would have udavar. And so the vocal schwa up front, then Hebrew likes to begin with this shurek if it's a conjunctive vav added to the front of this. Now, this is the only exception. This is the only exception where a Hebrew syllable will begin with a vowel, and that's in this case with the conjunctive vav. And this is the special case, so this is the exception. And so you'll have before a vocal schwa, you will have the shurek. The conjunctive vav will be in the form of a shurek, and it will also happen with. This is the exception before what we call labial letters, or letters made with the lips, a bait, mame, or pay. Before these letters, then you will also get this shurek. And the Hebrew language, they like to slide into these letters, and we would have something like uvet. So you would slide into that bait, that with the V, without that dagesh, and it goes uvet. You would get umidbar. You can see you can uva, you're sliding in there. And so if you had, of course, with bait here, also, just to remind you, that has the lene, this is bait, but when you add a vowel in front of that, the lene goes away, and it's now no longer a B, but a V sound, and becomes uvet, uvet. And so these letters, the bait, the mame, and also the pay that take the shurek in front of them for the vav conjunctive, or conjunctive vav, they are called, as an acronym to help you remember, they are called the Bumaf letters. Beit, Mem, Pei, and they take the Shurik. And this is again just to remind you, Bumaf, before these letters, the conjunctive vav goes as a Shurik. And so this is what we have. Let's take a look at the vocabulary and read those. So turn with me in your chapters to your vocabulary. And we have, again, with your chapter 8 vocabulary, we have Zavach. Zavach, he slaughtered or sacrificed. We have Zevach, the accent up front, Zevach, sacrifice. Mizbeach, this is the place of sacrifice, or the altar. It's not unusual, it's common to have the mem at the beginning of a word, sometimes expressing the place of this happening, so the place of sacrifice or altar. Mizbeach, have that furtive patach thrown in there. We have the word bain, between, and how do you remember? We have bain, son, without the yod, and then we have bain with a yod in it here that's between, and the way I remember this is we have the yod between the beit and the noon, and that helps with the word between connection there. We have the word law or instruction is Torah, Torah. Land or ground is Aramah, Aramah. He went down is Yarad, Yarad. We have the word lama or lama. It's a preposition for what? Remember, ma is what or how. Lama preposition for, to or for, so for what or why. Lama. Malak, he ruled or was king. Of course, melech is king, and the verb malak, he ruled. Again, the vav conjunctive, shown here with the vocal schwa. And, but, even, or now. We have eitz, the tree, eitz. Zahav, for gold, zahav. Silver is kesef, kesef. We have Yosef, for Joseph, Yosef. Bana, he built. Bana, he built. And Yardain, Jordan. And Yarad, the verb from which this comes, is to go down. The Jordan winds its way down the Jordan River Valley. And so Yardain is Jordan. Or with the article, it will be Ha-Yardain, the Jordan. All right, this is what we have. So let's go to the questions and then study your vocabulary and on to your exercises.